Hey folks, this is pecktec, and today we're going to do an all aquarium update, an all enclosure update, all projects update. I'm basically going to go through all the stuff I have with water, plants, and or animals in it and give you a little look at what's going on now, the current status, as it were. I've had a bit of the eternal summer slacking bug lately, and this year I have not produced a lot of videos. I want to get back into more of a regular schedule as soon as I can. I really haven't felt the energy that I once did to just try to produce weekly content. I'd almost rather focus on better monthly content and, maybe make a little bit better video, but it comes out once a month. YouTube's algorithm will punish me for not making shorts, not making like low effort content to feed you guys at a constant basis. So if you wouldn't mind, if you like this video, be sure to click like and click subscribe. There's a bunch of people, I keep meeting people at events and stuff that tell me that they've been unsubscribed. And I always was skeptical when people would tell me that before, but I've seen it. There's a lot of weird things going on with the subscriptions, and if you haven't watched in a while, I don't mind. But YouTube might decide that you don't like to watch this channel anymore, so if you happened on here, go check and see if you're subscribed or not, because I'd love to have you back. I do have timestamps down below. If you came in from another project and you're wondering kind of where it's at, or maybe you have a specific tank, or you want to come back and reference something else, you can just look down in the description and it maps out everything we're going to talk about today. This video is going to be a weird mix of successes and failures with my tanks. I've been maintaining them kind of the way I always have, but I've had a few little setbacks here and there. At the end of this video will be a really cool project that I've been working on for weeks and weeks, it seems like, and it'll be ready probably for my next video. But we'll talk about that at the end of this video. Some of my tanks have really come back and doing good. Of course, some aren't. And there's a couple on the list to redo. So without further ado, why don't we get into the projects now? All right, we're gonna start off in my living room here. And this is a vision cage that was set up for the Vivarium Challenge. This is it after about a year of growth. I set it up as a crested gecko enclosure. Unfortunately, my crested gecko sort of disappeared, and I have not seen him in a long time. I had a feeling that it was getting a little bit too much shade, so I decided to pull out that money tree. And while I was in there, I poked around, I looked around. It's been several weeks. For what I read, cresties can brumate, and I've been hoping that maybe he'll reappear, but I don't see him. Worst case scenario, I think he's crawling behind that wall that I made and probably died back there or something. But I don't smell anything. The thing was never open, so it's kind of sad, but I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. The rest of the enclosure, of course, looks great. And I'm really glad I pulled that tree out of there. It really increased the light quite a bit. Now, one thing that has survived in here really well is my powder orange isopods. I have a lot of isopods in here. That their growth has been quite exponential. They are all over the place. I think for a few days I was throwing food in for the cresty, and I wouldn't see. I'd see he hadn't eaten it, but I'd find these things all around it. So they must have really plumped up after he disappeared. But I'm seeing these quite a lot. They're everywhere, and that's good. I mean, it's a nice, healthy, bioactive vivarium there. Also, I wanted to say this mister, it got pretty bad reviews, so I was worried about it, but it is still going. Of course, I use RO water in there, and it sprays down the plants every few hours for a few seconds, and it's kept it perfect in there. Like, the plants seem to be growing and thriving really well. Even that money tree was too. It was just way too big, so I had to pull it out. It was all over the light on top. The light from Fluval's also doing really great, so I've been very happy with it. Now, as we move over to the 210, I wanted to take a quick look at some of the fish in there. They've grown and gotten pretty old, old and fat. A lot of them. This tank I keep threatening to take down, and I will. It's just such a huge project, and it's going to be quite expensive too to replace the substrate, depending on what I go with. And really, me flip-flopping on what I really want to do in here as far as substrate goes has kept me from keeping this project current. I really wanted to tackle this during the summer. The plants just don't grow very well. I'd like to switch it out with maybe some aqua soil. I thought about doing a dirted tank just because it would be really inexpensive to do it that way. But my dirted tank upstairs is kind of a lot of hassle, and the one I've kept before was a lot of hassle too. So I'm on the fence about whether or not I want to put something like that in my living room. Mr. Tubes is still doing good. He hides quite a lot. I don't see it very often. From my estimation, he's about at full size. Apparently they get between 18 and 24 inches, and he is about 19 and a half inches, so he might get a little bit bigger. For the most part, I'll see him sitting kind of majestically like this, or going up to gulp some water. It's really amazing that even with the foliage being a sort of sparse, I mean, I guess there's a lot of plants in there if you really sit back and look at them all. But even with that low amount of plants, he will just get in there and kind of wiggle around and disappear. So I play Where's Waldo a lot, just kind of wondering where he's ended up. I've got a plan, at least for the plants in here. There's another tank I've been wanting to break down for a long time, and I think I'm going to bring its plants down here. Also underneath, I'm breeding some fishes. My club has a new program for breeding fishes, and I got some of these at one of the club meetings, and they're in my sump along with some other things, just hoping that they have some babies in there. And I'm doing a little research to see if I can increase their numbers. It's always cool to see a new fish. These are sort of like live bearers. They're a little bit different than guppies, of course, but they're a neat fish. So here we have the BiOrd Air, and it is a terrarium. And I set this up, I guess it's a little over a year old now, or it's getting close to. I think I set this up near the end of the summer. I can't remember now. I went through a major trim. I put way too much of that dragon's tongue in there, and it kind of grew all over and almost went all the way to the top. It's a really neat enclosure. I was thrilled to see that my little dairy cow isopods are still kicking in there and doing well. And after the trim, I was worried about trimming it too, because I'm not really as comfortable with like the terrestrial plants. But after the trim, I was amazed at how often I see these guys now, because it really had gotten pretty thick in there, and it really didn't end up being very hard. I just pulled up a lot of the dragon's tongue. All these shots are from like right after I trimmed. But I just pulled up a bunch of that dragon's tongue and some other things, and just kind of rearranged some placement in there. I didn't really have to pull up most of the plants that you see that are still in there. A lot of the moss seems to be kind of brown, like it's dying and stuff, but it's, I don't know, it still looks pretty unique to me. I'm always thrilled when I walk in and I find it misting like this. Of course, I triggered this for our video. But every now and then you'll walk into the room and you'll see it just kind of shooting its mist down there. It's really fun. Right next to it, we've got the 43 Gallon Anoxic. I've just decided to call it that because it's set up with the kind of principles that I did with the 20 gallon that you'll see in a little bit. I've got an undergravel filter there and kitty litter, and it is doing really good. Like it's had its kind of terrible, it had its like its terrible twos or whatever. It went through kind of a tricky period, but it's started to really come out of that and become really, really stable. The fish in there seem like they're doing really well. There's a couple of things that have failed on this tank. My UV filter doesn't seem like it's working anymore. I think it needs a different power supply, but that fluval UV doesn't work. The CO2 on this also ran out, and I just kind of let it run out. I also took out that little wave maker that I put in the back that kind of alternated the streams and stuff. It seemed like it was just making a little bit too much current. And after I ran out of CO2, I didn't really have a reason to push bubbles around and stuff. So I decided to take that off. And it's a little bit calmer in there. The fish they didn't really seem to mind it before, but I see them exploring a little bit differently now. So maybe it was for the best. I've had a problem with some hair algae in here. I tend to have problems with hair algae, especially the first 2 years of an aquarium's life. And then if I get really lucky, it pulls through it. Every now and then I'll get an aquarium that just won't cooperate and never kind of sets in. But I think this one's well on its way. It's still got some issues, of course, but overall it's really great. Now, I just did an update on the Megaflex, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot. I will tell you that when I shot it the first time, I wondered if I'd lost my some of my peacock gudgeons, because I could only see like 2 of them come out, but there are actually 5 in there, and they have since come out and let me get a look at them. It's really neat to see the fish in here. This tank is about to get a little bit fuller. As I break down some other tanks, this tank is going to kind of fill up with them, and hopefully it won't throw the balance off too much. But I think it can take it. I think it can probably take a bigger population than what I've got going in here. And a lot of these fish are really old and starting to age out, like this green neon tetra. He's pretty old there. But what a cool tank. If you want to know more, I did just do a full update on it to kind of explain everything that's gone on for the past few years. Over here we have the Flora 15 gallon. And this is basically a big piece of driftwood with a tree that I made out of pieces of Anubias. In the top there, we've got red, blue-eyed neon rainbows. Look, this little small fish that's really, really gorgeous that I'd like to breed. I've got like 1 male and 2 females. I had a whole bunch of orange shrimp in here, but I think I've run into a parasite or something, and they've started dying off pretty rapidly. This is another project. I'm going to have to break it down and redo it this year. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it, but it is definitely on the chopping block to get renovated with some new ideas. Over here next to it, we've got this tiny waterfall. Now, this is a little project from 2020, and I made a big mistake, I think, in maintaining it. So if I'd used RO water, I probably wouldn't have choked out this substrate. I think what has happened is I just used regular tap water, and as it evaporated, it left behind all these minerals and stuff, and it just really clogged everything up. I need to pull all of that out. I have a bunch of stuff wicking water to it, and I need to pull all of that out. Also need to replace this pump that died at some point. I did make that whole piece where it would come out, and hopefully I'll get around to fixing this soon. For now, I just have the water coming up through that wick and feeding that tree. So on the other side of the room in my kitchen, we've got the Speck 16. This is one I made with all ETAA products. As far as the substrate and stuff like that. That was kind of the big thing, like on top of it being the Speck, like the biggest Speck that they ever made. It was made with all ETAA products and stuff, and I was real proud of that. I thought it was neat. I tell you, long term, the plants have really, really done well in here. And I've got a really, really great Crypt parv carpet there on the left. I want you to notice that. Because it is really hard to get Crypt parv to grow like that. But boy, after it settled in just a little, it took it about 1.5 years. But after that, it just really went crazy up there. So that's really cool. I have let the fish kind of dwindle down in this one quite a bit, but I've just added a few more. What I had in here is some spotted blue-eyed rainbows. I had like 3 of those, and then a couple of other kind of random fish. I have a celestial pearl danio that never comes out of that bush there. It always just stays in the back, and he's actually been migrated from a few other tanks. So I decided it was time to get him some friends, and I went to the store the other day and picked up 6 more celestial pearl danios to add in here. He did come out and take a look and kind of acknowledge them for a second and then shot right back in. I think that fish is just a loner. There's a really funny story about that fish that I'll have to tell you all one day. But yeah, I decided to go ahead and add these in here and just to kind of fill up the tank a little bit. Plus, I love these things. Little tiny trout is what they look like. They also pair well with my cherry red shrimp. This is my original colony of cherry red shrimp and one of the last little tanks full of them. I've got a few other places, but this is the biggest population of them that I have. So outside, we've got the garden pond. And I want to apologize because I have not been the best about gardening.
It's a little weedy and weird right here. Now the place is doing pretty good. Like all the plants are growing really well, but I haven't gone in and like trimmed some weeds, and I'm starting to get grass growing in my bog filter and stuff. It's really annoying. I really love my carnivorous plant, my pitcher plant. It's the same plant that I planted years ago. It just keeps coming back. At some point in the wintertime, I just chop all of this stuff off, and it just grows back every time. It's really, really neat. See, it traps bugs down there in little water puddles inside of it. And yeah, the pond's been great. I've got some fish in here too. I moved some danios. They're like long fin danios in here. You'll see those in a minute. I've also got a bunch of aquarium plants. All of those plants I put in last year. There's some like dwarf sag and some other things. I put them in last year and they overwintered. So they went through at least one winter. And so there's about 3 or 4 different kinds of aquarium plants. Maybe if they make it another winter, maybe I'll make a video about aquarium plants that can do that in my region. But here's those danios. They're really pretty blue color. I can't wait to see what they look like when I pull them out at the end of the season. I haven't seen any babies yet. I was hoping that they would breed like crazy in here with all the live food like coming in from nature and whatnot. But I really haven't seen any babies yet. So upstairs, we've got the 57-gallon column. This is my oldest planted tank. Really old YouTube video. I think it's called A Planted Tank Journal or something like that. This tank I've been threatening to break down for a long, long time. Now I kind of need to, like the stand that it's on. I've had a couple of water mishaps over the years, and it's kind of degraded my stand, and it's starting to look a little janky. And I'm worried that I'm going to have like a real crisis if I don't just take this down. But the plants have started to get really, really thick in here again. Every now and then they'll go through this plant boom, and they just do really, really well. Every fish that's in here is like a refugee of some tank that I've broken down. This just kind of ended up being the miscellaneous community tank dumping ground for all my little projects. Lots and lots of those yellow endlers and stuff too growing in here. All these plants I want to use to replant the 210 downstairs. So basically I just take all of this and break it out into the 210. A lot of them are really huge scale plants too, like the really big Anubias and some of these other plants that are actually pretty enormous once you pull them out and kind of get them off on their own. And so it'd be interesting to see just how much of a tank I can plant pulling all of this out. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all the fish in here. They're going to be split amongst all the different tanks and stuff downstairs. The Flex will get some of these, and I guess I'll spread them around a bunch of different tanks. But this tank's been going for a really long time, so I'll be kind of excited to kind of get this down and move on to maybe something else. Now my dirted no filter 20 gallon. Unfortunately, this isn't one of my success stories. I do see blue shrimp in here. I see like maybe a dozen or so. I didn't see any when I was filming just now. Of course, I just done a water change, and I think I scared them all off, cleaning the glass and stuff. But I have cleaned it up quite a bit in here. It was starting to get quite algified, and I thought maybe I just wasn't seeing the shrimp in the underbrush, but I think perhaps they're not surviving. So I'm going to step back a bit. I noticed there was some planaria in there. And so I've introduced a fish that can be dangerous to shrimp, but I don't see very many shrimp at all. So I'm not as worried about it. It is, in fact, I see the Amano shrimp, like there's one there. The Amano shrimp all seem to be fine. They're all accounted for. It's just all the other kinds of shrimp. But I brought this guy in. I've seen these go after planaria before. And if there's any planaria still around, I want them to just go and pick it off. I haven't seen like a major amount of it like I have other tanks, but I have seen it around, so I suspect it could be part of the problem. So back in my game room, we've got another Hydra tank. This is another all-in-one tank with a filter built into the back. And this tank I've redone a couple of times, but I can't really seem to get it to balance out. It's just been cleaned up from a water change, so it looks okay. But you can see that the plants don't look as pretty as they do, and maybe some of my other tanks with Anubias and stuff. I've got plans to redo this tank. Oh, and this fish here, this little river loach, or butterfly loach, I guess they're called sometimes, is a complete bastard. He chases all the other fish around. It keeps. I think I have a lot of fish in here, but he tends to scare everybody out. He sends them off into hiding, especially when the food comes out. He'll go and chase everybody back into the bushes and stuff, and it's been kind of. So I'm not even sure what all fish I have in there. I need to break it apart and kind of see what's going on. So right next door, we've got the Anoxic 20 gallon, and this is sort of an interesting little kit. It's got an undergravel filter that feeds into a corner filter that goes into a canister filter. And under there, I've got like the cat litter and stuff, and it's basically set up in a similar way, maybe not exactly like, but in a similar way to like Dr. Novak and some of the things that he talks about. And this was an experiment, but I gotta say, this is an extremely stable tank. I never have algae on the front glass. Like sometimes I'll have a thin film of something and kind of scrape it off really easily, but this tank doesn't algae over. The fish seem really, really happy. I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of plant growth or anything. And I do have some thick substrate in areas like the undergravel filter doesn't go all the way through. And it's got a really low amount of suction on there, so it's not like water flow through the roots or anything. But I don't think I had enough substrate. That's when I did the bigger tank downstairs. I was sure to add a lot of substrate in to sort of counteract all of that. But it's interesting if you look at the red root floaters here versus my dirted tank, how underdeveloped they seem. Like they still procreate and go pretty quick, but they're not really even red in here at all. So I think that's kind of wild. And they're the same because I brought them from one to the other. This has got a little Kessel light on top of it, just like the tank next to it. And it seems to be doing great. I'm excited enough about this to try it in a few other places. So here's the Stempunk Tank. This is probably my favorite build I've ever done. And I've got a new secret build happening after all this to show you guys. It's very similar to this one. Inside of here, we've got some what are sold as black coolie loaches at PetSmart. I have 4 of them in there. There's also like a female guppy and even a couple of cherry red shrimp that are living in here. And I'll see them at different times. These guys are great little wiggly things that always kind of catch your eye in that porthole. There's a lot of limited viewability in there, so it's good to have something that moves around a lot. On top, we've got my little Wabikusa pyramid, and it's covered in buse. I've been taking buse that looks like it's dying from other tanks and stuff and just sort of attaching it to the inside there. Of course, off on the side here, we have some tools that I use. These are tools I use in all my different tanks, but it's kind of fun to think that they're there to trim this up. I hardly ever need anything to trim the buse, which seems to be thriving up there. I think that's amazing. It's thriving. I thought it would. Just like the Anubias that I put up there has really done so well, I had to pull it out, and hopefully this will too. So right next door, we've got the Hydra 10-gallon tank, and this tank has got a bunch of Pygmy Coreodoris, which I adore. It's kind of a little species tank just for them. I'm going to break this tank down. I think I need the space for my little secret project that I've got going in the back. But I'll probably take a lot of the plants and elements from in here and add them to that tank. So all of this will kind of live on in another tank. I'm thinking about taking all the Pygmy Coreodoris and dropping them in the maybe the dirted tank. I'm not sure yet. They're really cute. And they've done a great job of just kind of scouring the sand for little critters and stuff. And they're really fun to watch. I'd like to get more. Every time I see them, I get as many as I can, but they do tend to be kind of expensive. I'd like to do a big mail order at some point. If I ever get them settled, I might do a big mail order and put them all in a tank together, because I think they'd be fun. I really want them to breed. I'm hoping maybe if I put them in a super thickly planted tank, maybe I can get a few babies that'll survive, but I haven't yet. In the back, of course, I've got some plants growing out of the filter. It's that all-in-one type filter and that fluval light that I like so much. It ramps up and down and does a great job. This has been a really, really entertaining little tank. But I kind of like to break it down and maybe reimagine it as something else. This was sort of an experiment, like kind of pile a bunch of sand on it to fix a problem, and I don't think it really fixed anything. So I'm going to start over. Over here, we've got my 10-gallon Scaping with Scraps challenge that I did a few years ago. I think that was a 2020 project too. Of course, it had like the sand waterfall that it broke within 6 months or so, and I removed it. Now it's sort of like my Crypt tank. The Crypts were taken over. I actually dug out a bunch of the Crypts that were all through the middle too, and I've just removed them. And I moved this little Anubias up that was kind of hidden in the back. I kind of moved it up and pulled some rocks out of the sand and set them up there for a little kind of altar in the middle of this. And it's neat because the way those plants are, those crypts on the side, they kind of bend over and it sort of makes this sort of tunnel looking effect in there. And I really like it. I wasn't really going for that, but it's kind of interesting. So we've got our thick coverage on the side, and a lot of the fish that get scared will hide in there. I've got a lot of gobies in this tank. I've got about 3 different kinds of gobies. This is, I think it was sold to me as a dragon goby, and I've got 2 of them. This guy and one that's a little bit bigger. Now, I don't know if the other one's bigger because it's female or it's male. I think they might be different sexes. And I do notice that they munch on snails, which is why you won't see a lot of snails on here. Here's the other one. They can kind of color morph at will. They could go from almost all the way white to this kind of checkerboard to even really, really dark. And this one's incredibly shy, and it doesn't come out. If I sneak up with a long lens and throw some food in there, sometimes I can catch him, but it's pretty tricky. I've got another goby that lives under the sand, and I did not see at the time when I was filming all this stuff, so unfortunately I won't be able to show it to you, but he's still in there. I do see him periodically. Another fish I really adore that's in here is this coolie loach. Now, I love my little black coolie loaches, but I really, really love these banded ones. And I've bought a number of them. This is the only one that's lived. And this one's been around for a couple of years. It feels like he's doing really good. It's neat if you watch the sand shoot through those gills as it kind of siphons through there. You can tell they really appreciate that fine sand like that. And I'm glad I decided to add that to the top of this tank. This tank is kind of weirdly done. It's got like a soil at the bottom, and then it's capped with sand on top. And that soil substrate and the sand have kind of mixed together. I think that might even be ETAA. I can't remember which brand of soil that I used for that. I've also got a Siphodon goby, and he does this weird thing where he sticks to the glass. I don't know how he does it. My Inler also is a little confused about how he's able to do it, but it's really neat. Is he holding on with his chin, or is he holding on with those fins, or is he just kind of like next to it? It doesn't look like maybe that bottom fin could be holding it. I can't tell. I don't know how he's holds on like that, but it's really neat. They kind of remind me of Autosynclus a little bit, but they're big time meat eaters, and yeah, they're pretty interesting. I've also got, of course, my yellow Endler and a male and a female in there. And the hope is that they'll make lots of babies and maybe that will become food for the gobies. That's kind of what I had in mind anyway.
So that's about it. I have been working on a project I'm calling Krabby Island now, which is going to be a mixture of that waterfall tank that were kind of retrofitted into something else, something quite different. In fact, I'm doing another Wabikusa style aquarium with Wabikusa bricks and buse and all the plants from another tank. So it's going to be a really interesting build. I spent a long time trying to figure out exactly how to make this work. So I've got a few final touches to make. So maybe not next week, but the week after, you'll see something about that. And folks, that's all I got for you today. Be sure to click subscribe if you want to come back. I'd love to see you again. And if you'd like to see playlists with all updates, I have a playlist that's only updates. And I have this thing that YouTube thinks that you're going to like a lot. Follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.